It's May 17th, 1979. Philadelphia Phillies versus Chicago Cubs. Top of the 10th inning. Phillies legend Mike Schmidt, and not the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Night Watchman, by the way, hits a go-ahead home run to put the Phillies on top.
There's a high fly to left. Look out now. Look out. It's gone. It's a home run by Schmidt. Oh, brother.
If you're watching this channel, you've probably seen baseball before. A sport where everyone who crosses the plate counts as one run. Well, Schmidt's home run made the score 23-22 in favor of the Phillies, a game they'd win by that score not long after. It was amazing. 13 runs were scored in the first inning, and 7 players had at least 4 RBIs on that day. Here's the craziest part though. They did all of this in just 4 hours and 3 minutes. Game 1 of the 2023 World Series, which also had 11 innings, had about a quarter of the amount of runs scored in 1 minute less game time. That means the barrage of scoring in the Phillies-Cubs game was about as densely action-packed as you could get, leading to one of, if not the most eye-popping scores in baseball history. And that's why we're here. Everyone loves a weird score. It's fun to look at on the TV, it jumps out immediately in the record books. So what are some of the weirdest final scores sports games have ever ended with? Well, to the best of my subjective opinion, let's breeze through some of the strangest. Tennessee Titans versus New England Patriots. The Titans are getting ready to face the Patriots on October 18th, 2009. Up until this game, Tennessee had yet to get even a single win. That kinda sucks. And this snowy Sunday just added to the pile. Between all the wild passes, dropped passes, missed tackles, and everything in between, the Titans just couldn't put it together. And I mean, it didn't really help that Tom Brady threw 6 touchdown passes this game. Even when they switched out Tom Brady in the second series of the third quarter for Brian Hoyer, their defense just still couldn't handle it. Part of this could have been that they were missing both their starter cornerbacks, Cortland Finnegan and Nick Harper, due to injuries and having to put rookies in their place. And what a great game to come into as a rookie on the Titans side. Brian Hoyer completed 9 of the 11 passes he threw this game for 52 total yards and a 1-yard run, so needless to say, his rookie debut went a little bit smoother than the rookies on the Titans side. By the end of the game, New England destroyed Tennessee with a final score of 59-0. And that's not even the craziest game we're going to cover today. These really are the weirdest scores in sports history.
He said it. He said the thing. Yes.
1940 NFL Championship game. On December 8th, 1940, guess what? Something pretty crazy happened. The Chicago Bears are getting ready to face the Washington Redskins, as they were previously known, and they're mad. And honestly, they kind of have a good reason to be. 3 weeks before this, Washington had actually beat Chicago 7-3, and after the game, Washington's owner George Preston Marshall went on record saying that the Bears are crybabies and quitters when the going gets tough. Yeesh. Back in the 40s, those are fighting words at the very least. Right off the jump, Washington must have known they were in trouble. By halftime, Chicago had put up 28 points to the Washington's 0. Towards the beginning, in just their second play from scrimmage, running back Bill Osmanski, that's a crazy last name, ran a 68-yard touchdown. Wild. They ended up finishing the game out with a modest 73-0 score. Chicago recorded 501 total yards on offense, 382 rushing yards, and 8 interceptions, returning 3 of them for touchdowns. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense. How can they end the game 73-0 with stats like that? Well, it's because those stats were just from the third quarter alone. I mean, what do you guys think though? You think they deserved it for their owner talking that good smack? Or just type anything in the comments, please. It helps our algorithm, thank you. Texas Rangers versus Baltimore Orioles. The first person to get on base during this game is Michael Young at the top of the first with 2 outs on the board. And oh boy, it would not be the last of those for the Rangers. By the top of the 4th inning, the Orioles have put up 3 runs against the Rangers, and the Rangers haven't put up any. But for the rest of this game, that's all the Orioles are gonna get. Also, for the script of this video, I accidentally typed Oreos. I just thought that was kind of funny. By the top of the 8th, the Rangers have gotten 2 grand slams mixed in with other home runs and things like that sprinkled in between. They have 20 runs to the Orioles 3. I'm going to call them the Oreos for the rest of this. Yeah, I wasn't joking. The Orioles only scored 3 runs this entire game, and the Rangers completely destroyed them. Another crazy fact about this is that by the end of the game, they finished with a final score of 30-3. and the Rangers only put up runs in 4 of the 9 innings. They got a collective 30 runs in 4 innings. This, by the way, still holds the record to this day of the highest score in a single game by a single team in MLB history. This, of course, was a very quick synopsis, but I did do a full video about this game about a year ago, so if this interested you, I'd recommend checking that out and getting the full story and full game breakdown. Adema, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, versus SOE. This is the biggest scoring win in professional
football
history. There's something especially interesting about this game though. See, the reason SOE lost so bad in this Madagascan League Championship game wasn't because they were necessarily bad. In fact, just the year before this, they had actually won the series. No, it was because they actually didn't even try. Actually, the team was on strike because in the previous game of this best of 4 series, one of the refs made a pretty controversial call. In response to this, Zach Abe, the team's manager, protested this call. When the protest failed to change anything, he told his team to protest on the field by shooting the ball into their own goal. And boy did they. To the tune of 149 times. This turned out to be a pretty bad call for them though, since Zachary and 4 other players were fired as a direct result of this protest, and abysmal final score of 0-149. They haven't won the Madagascan League since. Detroit Pistons versus Denver Nuggets. Unlike games I've mentioned so far in this video, this crazy score didn't happen because one team was just better or straight up protesting or anything like that. In fact, it's the exact opposite. The Pistons and the Nuggets were both nice. With barely any shots missed, this game lasted a grueling 3 hours and 11 minutes and ended in triple overtime. Could you imagine sprinting up and down the court for over 3 hours straight? I mean, yes, there were breaks and stuff in between, of course, but that's still a ridiculous amount of cardio. When it was all said and done, this game ended with a final score of 186-184. The Pistons beat the Nuggets by 2 points. With a combined score of 370, this is the highest scoring game in the history of the NBA, a record that still stands at the time of making this video. Memphis Grizzlies versus Oklahoma City Thunder. Staying on the topic of basketball, let's take a look at a more recent game that happened in 2021. The Grizzlies are facing the Thunder at the Grizzlies Stadium. They have the home field advantage. I know basketball isn't played on a field. You can stop writing your comment now, thanks. So that's always a good omen, right? Coming off of a win against the Raptors the day before, but also missing their star hooper Ja Morant due to knee issues, this game is pretty up in the air. However, in the end, that didn't really seem to matter as they absolutely destroyed the Thunder. The Grizzlies were on fire and the Thunder just couldn't handle it. But hey, at least the Thunder is now part of a new NBA record. On the losing side, that is, because this game ended with a score of 152-79, a deficit of 73 points. That's pretty crazy. The highest scoring game in college basketball history are numbers so high they feel like they're arcade game scores. January 12th, 1992. Division II Troy State, now a D1 team simply known as Troy, is playing NAIA DeVry. DeVry puts up 141 points, which is insane in college basketball, and they still get the doors absolutely blown off of them. Troy State sets the record with 253 points. They go so fast that the stat keepers are overwhelmed by the rate and initially give them 258. There's a John Boy's video on this if you want to know more. He gives a much deeper explanation than the one we gave here, since the full focus of that video is just this game. But you want to know something wild? DeVry probably wasn't even that mad about losing by about 112 points, because in the words of this Troy player,
were you talking to them out there? Were they having a good time?
Yes, they was. They wanted us to get the record, so we got it. And they're sharing a part of the glory.
Now, we've been talking a lot about high-scoring games and big blowouts, so let's change it up a bit and talk about the lowest scoring game in baseball history. I mean, I'm just gonna spoil it right now. It was 0-0. It was a game between the Washington Senators and the Detroit Tigers on July 16th, 1909. The game went on for 18 innings with no runs from either side, and they just ended up calling it off due to it getting dark, and they didn't use stadium lights back then, so if it's dark, it's dark. I mean, if you think about it, 0-0 is the lowest score you could get, and you can't go negative, so I mean, what else is there really to say? I just wanted to throw that in there because it was funny. Australia versus American Samoa. Now, this is a pretty popular one. So popular, in fact, that they're actually making a movie about it that should be released by the time this video goes up. In case you haven't heard about it though, in 2001, the American Samoa team and Australia are facing each other to qualify for the FIFA World Cup at the International Sports Stadium in Coffs Harbour, Australia. Now, trying in this instance is a very strong word, as Australia probably didn't have to try that hard. The American Samoa team sucked. to put it lightly. This game set the record for not only the largest victory in international football, but also the record for the most goals scored by a single player, as Archie Thompson scored 13. Even David Zadrilic, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, got in on the action by scoring the second highest amount of goals in an international match since World War I. They finished this game with a total of 31 goals to 0. I might check out that movie when it comes out. Miami Heat versus Cleveland Cavaliers. This game actually held the record for the biggest blowout in NBA for 30 years before the more recent one I mentioned in 2021. The Heat is facing the Cavs at the Cavs home court in Cleveland. This game was kind of weird because both teams weren't really doing too bad so far in the season. The Cavs were 13-8, while the Heat was 11-12. Not the best, but not the worst. By halftime, the Heat had scored 53 points, while the Cavs had scored 73. In terms of basketball, that wasn't like a give-up time score, but that wouldn't last very long. The game ended with the Cavs winning and a final score of 148-80. That's a 68-point loss, and at one point it was all the way up to 73 points. I mean, at least the record was beaten, so at least the Heat have that to be happy about, I guess. Georgia Tech versus Cumberland. This game is insane. I'm gonna miss a ton of details because there's just no way to go over everything in this short segment, so if you want a full breakdown, yet again, John Boyes made a very good video about it. Basically, John Heisman, yes, the John Heisman, the guy who basically invented modern football and has that one trophy named after him, was pissed. See, at the time, John Heisman was a baseball coach, and he had just been embarrassed by Cumberland's baseball team because they hired a professional team to pretend to be their team. It was a whole thing. 1916 rolls around and Cumberland is set to face Georgia Tech, but plot twist, they don't even have a football team. But Heisman was still very angry, so he threatened to charge Cumberland $3,000 if they backed out of the scheduled game, which is the equivalent of $66,000 today. In response to this, Cumberland basically just grabbed a bunch of law students and told them, hey, go play football. That was it. That was their team. Yeah, they lost really bad. Georgia Tech ended up finishing the game beating Cumberland 222 points to 0. That doesn't sound real, but again, watch the John Boyes video. It is. Australian Wallabies versus Namibia. In 2003, Namibia is playing against Australia in the Rugby World Cup. Namibia was hopeful heading into this game. One of their players was even quoted as saying, "We never assumed it would be easy, but we still hoped that we could do well." But they didn't. The first two games they played in this championship, they lost. The first of which they lost 67-14 to Argentina, and the second one they lost 64-7 to Ireland. Now, at this point, Namibia is starting to realize they bit off a little more than they could chew. "What chance do we have?" one of the players even said. And yeah, they were kind of right, but even with their hopes at an all-time low, they still may not have expected how much of a beatdown they were about to take. By halftime, Australia had already scored 69 points against them, and when they started playing again after halftime, Australia didn't let up in the slightest. They finished out the game winning 142-0 and setting the record for the highest scoring win and subsequently lowest scoring defeat in Rugby World Cup history. Ouch. Tiger Woods, 2000 US Open. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anything about golf. So take what I say with a grain of salt because I'll probably be wrong in how I deliver some of the information. Sorry. In this particular match, Tiger Woods won in 15 shots. To put this in perspective, no player had won by 15 shots or more on the PGA Tour since 1948. Apparently, the most standout thing about his performance was putting. People described him as having Jedi powers, or he was just simply using his mind to will the ball into the hole. And if we know anything about Tiger Woods, we know that he's always been pretty dang good at finding the hole. Sorry, that joke was too easy. US men's versus Nigeria. Olympic basketball. The US has always dominated when it comes to Olympic basketball, so it's not much of a surprise that they made this video. In this game against Nigeria, they were already up 26 points in the first quarter, and by the end of the first half, they had scored a total of 78 points. This game was kind of over before it even started, and by the time there was only 5 minutes left in the third quarter, they had already scored 100 points. Surprise, surprise, they won and proceeded to set the record for the highest scoring win in Olympic men's basketball history. Again, the US has always dominated in men's basketball, and with such legends as Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Kobe Bryant, just to name a few, on this 2012 team, rip Kobe by the way, I mean, is it really even a surprise? Hockey time. Detroit Red Wings versus New York Rangers. The Red Wings may not be as good as they used to be, but in the 40s, they were pretty dang good. When they faced the New York Rangers in 1944, they came out swinging. They scored 2 goals before the first period, 5 goals in the second period and another 8 goals in the third. Not only that, but they also kept the Rangers from scoring any goals the entire game. They finished this game with a 15-0 score and went down in the history books for being the winners in the biggest blowout in professional hockey history. And just to add salt to the wound, the Rangers didn't win a single game for the rest of this 1944 season. But the Red Wings, they did pretty dang good. And finally, Kenya versus Sri Lanka in cricket. Yet another sport that, I'll be honest, I know next to nothing about, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But even I know that beating a team by 172 runs in a World Championship game and setting that as the new record, especially since the game has been around since the 16th century, is insane. The star player of this game was
Sanath Jayasuriya,
who scored 88 runs off of 44 balls. Sri Lanka ended this game beating Kenya with a final score of 260-6 off 20 overs. Since Kenya lost this deciding game, they were eliminated from the tournament, while Sri Lanka and New Zealand advanced to the Super 8 stage. Sri Lanka didn't end up winning the tournament, but man, they beat the brakes off of Kenya. Well, that's it. There were ups and downs, I think, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching as always. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And have a lovely day, gamers. Peace.